At Dave Cooper Live, we connect the industry leaders in the architectural, engineering, and construction space with the people, the products, and the processes to help them build it better. Welcome, everybody. Wildfires are raging across LA, making headlines worldwide. Pacific Palisades, Altadena, entire communities devastated. But for those who call these places home, it isn't just another news story. It's personal. Altadena, in particular, has a rich history, especially for African Americans. And now, as 14,000 acres lay in ashes, the question isn't just how to rebuild. It's about who and what we rebuild and what kind of future is possible. Today, we are joined by Dr. Brent Musson, an award-winning researcher, real estate policy expert, and leading authority in offsite and modular construction, who calls Altadena home. He's here to give us the local perspective, talking about what's next and how we can help. So let's get into it after a few words from our supporting members. We have to thank out loud every show Cobalt Creed, service builders, developers, prefab home builders, and manufacturing, allowing them to achieve the highest levels of comfort, indoor air quality, and low energy costs from the HVA system installed for their projects and their customers. Their approach is centered around the Unico system, a small duct, high velocity central heating and cooling system. So if you're not familiar with them, check them out, cobaltcreed.com. And now a few words from these supporting members as well. Forward Solutions Group is successfully driving companies to succeed where others have failed. Are you looking to start a factory, optimize your existing factory, streamline your production, or take your team to the next level? Whatever your needs are, Forward has a solution for you. Reach out to Ben at forwardsolutionsgroup.com. Howick Ltd. has a long history of innovation in cold form steel manufacturing and producing innovative precision roll forming technology for customers throughout the United States and the world. Check out their machine buyer's guide for offsite modular construction or fast build construction with light steel for framing. Go to their website, howickltd.com. Brought to you by Greatech, one of the largest Autodesk partners globally and software developer of the PowerPack Advanced Design, Advanced Steel, and the StruxSoft product line. The complete solution to automate wood and light gauge steel framing, design, and documentation all the way out to CNC output, model, design, and manufacture with StruxSoft. Learn more at StruxSoftSolutions.com. All right. Again, a big thank you to all of our supporting members and for all of our members that you see going across the scrolling ticker below. We can't do any or all of this without all of your support out there. So if you'd like to be part of our show and be part of our community and you'd like to support what we do, this is your chance to join us and help us keep building it better. All right. Without further ado, let's bring in our good friend, Dr. Brent Musson. Dr. Musson, how are you?
I'm great. How you doing, Dave?
And I am amazing. It's always amazing when I get to have you on the show. First of all, second of all, I'm loving the handlebar mustache you got going on. It's working for you.
Thanks. I feel like I'm, I live in the West, so I should have a handlebar mustache, right?
You should. You absolutely should. Hey, listen, before we get into all the great work that you're working on, you know, you got Musson Factories, you're consulting on policy work, you know, here in the United States, and I'm sure a lot in California right now. Why don't you give everybody just a minute and a half elevator pitch, let everybody know who you are, what you do, and then let's get into this conversation and talk about who's going to rebuild, how we're going to rebuild from all of these disasters. And California is just one example. This is happening around the world. The floor is yours. Go for it.
Sure. So I do research on modular construction and manufacturing, housing specific policy, everything that relates to creating affordable housing. My research mostly focuses in Southern California, but there's also some research that we've done in other places as well. The focus of that research is specifically for our consulting practice, which consults government in how to make policy that is friendly to housing development, specifically using modern methods of construction, like modular offsite, panelized, 3D printing, all sorts of modern methods. That's my focus. That's my passion, and that's most of my professional life. I also teach project management to grad students at Northeastern University. I speak a little bit here and there, but that's what I do.
Well, and you're a great speaker. I've seen you speak in the past as well. So let's hop into this, right? We got 25 minutes. We got a lot to cover. So the LA wildfires are all over the news. Pacific Palisades, Altadena. You're from Altadena, so I hope you and your family and your house was spared by what's going on there. But can you kind of give us a little bit of information, what it's like being a local living in that area?
Yeah, sure. So Altadena is a special place. It is particularly a special place for African Americans, as the news covers. And so seeing it devastated as an Altadenan is really, really heartbreaking. When we were finally allowed back in, I took a drive through, and it absolutely broke my heart and broke my spirit. It is like nothing that you could ever imagine. It is a lot like Gaza there. And it also brings back sort of images of Red Summer in 1919, when 30 Black communities were burned, during that summer. Tulsa, Oklahoma, Elaine, Arkansas, Atlanta, Detroit. It's different in that it wasn't a sort of a terrorist attack, but the result is the same. This amazing community where 81% of the Black residents own their homes was just completely decimated in one night. 90-mile-an-hour winds, blowing fire. So it's essentially like a fire hurricane that came through and just burned the place down all in one night.
Yeah, I mean, it just ripped through, and you fire's bad enough, but you start putting 100 miles an hour wind behind it. All that is oxygen for the fuel, right? So with that said, though, the fires have brought a lot of attention to your hometown of Altadena, right? Which is also a significant place for African Americans. And I know that's something you really wanted to touch on and is near and dear to your heart. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Altadena is not a mostly Black town by any stretch of the imagination, but the the African Americans that live there are notable. Octavia Butler, Sidney Poitier, Jackie Robinson, Eldridge Cleaver, Hattie McDaniel, Jane Kennedy. I mean, the list just is endless of notable African Americans that made Altadena their home. But also, Altadena was unique in that people there they bought and owned their homes, and then generations stayed behind. And so many of the homes that are owned are not only owned, but they're owned outright. And some families own multiple homes as well. And so, it's a very special place in that regard. I grew up there and I raised, my family there. And so I know so many people there, high school friends, church friends, neighborhood friends, and so forth. And almost everybody that I know seems like they lost their home. So it's I can't even express the the devastation of all of that. But I also want to uplift the legacy of Altadena and assure that it doesn't end in fire the way that some of the other neighborhoods or communities that I mentioned did. The determination to build back is very, very strong, and the resources to build back are available. And so, it's important for people like me who are focused on policy and on housing development, that we participate in the process to make sure that we actually achieve the goals that the community has.
Yeah, and I'm going to put this up one more time here because, the next question kind of speaks to this. 14,000, and that's 1,000 acres burned in that fire. And if anybody's been to LA, there is just not 14,000 acres of open space to burn. Like every inch of it is covered by somebody's, livelihood, whether it's their house, whether it's where they work, whether it's where their kids go to school. How is this going to get rebuilt? Like honestly, we're going to talk about how it's going to be rebuilt, but I also want to know who's going to rebuild it. And then we're going to get into policy, but what's your thoughts on this? How do you rebuild? How do you recover from something this massive?
Yeah. So first, let me just say the fire was 14,000 acres. Altadena itself is about 5,500 acres. And so the fire consumed not only the town of Altadena, but also the mountainside that is right above Altadena. And so, there's just this massive amount of fuel that was consumed. So it's, if you I just want people to visualize what that actually was. With regard to building the traditional way, stick built on site, one lot at a time, each person trying to find a contractor, to come out, it would take decades to rebuild. So you and I have talked about in the past how we've had a shortage of skilled labor. My research actually dealt with the shortage of skilled labor that goes back, I think, about 40 years, where people just aren't entering the trades anymore. Nobody goes to high school and says, what, I think I want to be a carpenter. I want to be a plumber, or I want to do plaster work. So the idea of trying to find skilled trades to build that much is just impossible. It has to be done using some type of modern methods. It has to be some type of automation involved, and there also has to be just a lot of systems in place that increase efficiencies to make that happen. Of course, I mean, we're in the modular industry, and so when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and so this is a time for for modular construction. Having been in the industry as long as I have, I do appreciate the idea that everything isn't about moving volumetric boxes into place. Panelization has its place. Volumetric has its place. I'm sort of, really, really fond of mixed methods. For instance, bathroom and kitchen pods, and a lot of panels going back to some post and beam for the major structure. But there are a lot of different ways to build. But the most important part of it is really about letting people know and teaching people what their choices are, because not everybody knows that that any of these technologies exist, and not everybody knows, what they cost or what the advantages are.
Well,
That's about it.
All right. So, the technology's out there, as you know. I mean, you've been in this space a long time, whether it's modular, volumetric panels, mass timber. I mean, there's so much opportunity to really tap into, the more modern methods of construction, so to speak. But with that, one of the biggest hurdles we have in our industry of offsite construction is policy, right?
Yeah.
How do we get policy to allow us to use, some of the most efficient methods of rebuilding? How do we get the policy makers to work with us on this and allow us to be part of this solution? And quite honestly, Dr. Musson, it's not just about, these disaster areas. We need more housing and buildings, and places for people to, live and thrive across the country, for veterans, for homelessness, for everything. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So again, the hammer and nail, analogy, the piece of legislation that I'm working on policy brief for now is to change the way that general contractors enter the system. So right now, in order to become a general contractor, you generally have to be someone who's a tradesperson in the industry. So you have to be someone who's probably a carpenter framer, and then you study for your contractor's license. But as contracting becomes more sophisticated and more technology based, what really becomes more important are some other soft skills like project management. And so I'm right now working on a policy brief that will, if adopted, change or add, I should say, another path to becoming a contractor, which is not based on having worked as a skilled tradesperson, but having worked as a project manager. Project management is incredibly important, and using those skills to make sure that projects happen on time and under budget and within scope. That's really what is probably the biggest policy issue that we have. Now, of course, there are other policy issues, based on sort of the idea of on-site construction, like, tailgate meetings are essential under the law. Tailgate meetings don't make sense if you're in a factory. Some of the issues around air rights, for instance, with zoning that are common under the International Building Code. They assume just a floor that is also a ceiling. But when you're stacking volumetric modules, you end up running out of space, and you'll chop off a floor of a multifamily building, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I can go down this rabbit hole, but there are so many places where policy needs to be changed, in order to allow rebuilding.
How do people get involved to help with policy, right? You can put policy in front of the policy makers, right? But how do we get the policymakers, one, to listen? What is the process for getting them to adopt a new policy? So where do people help you do that? Or can they help you do that?
Yeah, there's something called a policy window that policymakers understand, which is policy really gets made when, and I'm giving you a little bit of how the sausage is made now. It happens when there is some type of an urgency that happens usually after a disaster or some major news cycle that changes the zeitgeist. Public opinion changes. There has to be a political will that's based on public opinion. There has to be opportunity, of course, and there has to be funding. Mm-hmm. And so when those three things come together, the policy window's open, and it doesn't stay open for long. And so that's the time to move. So if you want to change policy, you have to be able to identify what of those elements is missing and what can you add. Usually it's about the public opinion, the political will. In places like California, money doesn't seem to be our biggest issue with policy change. And most of the policy that we're talking about doesn't actually cost. So it's really about public opinion. So, what you do, for instance, actually is really incredibly important to changing policy, because you change people's minds. You change the, what people are talking about. that's an incredibly important thing. But also speaking directly to policymakers and sharing with them what is being talked about is important, because politicians don't often have their finger on the pulse of what the industries are talking about. They're sort of waiting for lobbyists to come and tell them what the people want, or at least what capital wants. And so it's important to make the voices heard. So in the modular industry is very small, but we can have a big voice. When you hear about policy issues that are going to politicians, it's not that 5 million people showed up on their doorstep, but you can look like 5 million people if everyone participates. It's like our national elections. People don't go out to vote, so a few people make decisions for the rest of us.
Yeah, and it's very true, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's like you said, you got to get to the table, and you gotta put your John Hancock on there as somebody that wants to see that change in the policy moving forward. California in particular, Dr. Musson, in recent weeks has talked about relaxing building codes. Not sure what that means, but it would be great to get your perspective on it, because how all of a sudden can they just relax building codes and, make things move faster? Like, where in the heck have we been? That this couldn't have happened, before a natural disaster.
Well, before the natural disaster, the policy window wasn't open. So there wasn't political will to do it, right? The building codes they're talking about relaxing are not really, that's not building in safety. So they're not saying, you don't have to use a 7D nail. you can use a brad, I mean, that's not what they're talking about. What they're talking about are really sort of zoning issues. And a lot of the zoning issues that happen in cities are about resisting densification. So for instance, in California, where I live, if the state is pushing for more housing density, most communities are going to push back on housing density in their community. And it really sounds like this sort of evil, nefarious act that, hey, we don't want the apartments here. We don't want housing here. And sometimes that is the case, but it's not always the case. It's also a sort of this issue, the paradox of the commons. So paradox of the commons is there was common land that was available for grazing. And this is, going back to England. And there was common land that was available for grazing. It was owned by the community, not by individuals. And so if you had a flock or a herd and you wanted to bring, your herd or flock to graze, then you could graze, and then someone else could come behind you and graze. But if you were afraid that the people who came behind you were going to have their herd overgraze and destroy the grazing land, then you might overfeed yours just to make sure that they don't go hungry next time you come back. Now you become the actual problem. So everyone who shows up has the same fear, and they become the problem of overgrazers. And so, that's sort of that's part of the issue when it comes to this housing density. If you're not a municipality that resists housing density, you'll end up with all the housing density, and the neighboring cities won't. And now you'll be the one that nobody wants to live in because it's the one crowded city. So some of this requires understanding the psychology of resistance and creating policy that interacts with that and understands and appreciates that psychology. The psychology isn't wrong. If you don't resist it, you're the only one that doesn't, then you're gonna have a problem in the end.
Yeah, for sure. So who's going to be able to rebuild this? Let's say we get some policies relaxed, and they allow us to, when I say us, because I feel like I am part of this community in a big way, they allow us to come in and really start swinging hammers or cranes or whatever it is we're going to do. How's this going to go forward? Who's going to get to rebuild?
Sure. So specifically in Altadena is kind of a great case study. Though it's in a disaster recovery, it's sort of a case study for what development looks like everywhere. But in Altadena, you have people who own the property now who are restricted by existing zoning and other codes. And then you have developers that want to come in and buy up that land and then redevelop it. And what typically happens, or often happens, I should say, is that developers come in with a lot more juice. They've got a lot more clout and a lot more influence. So they can buy up land, and then they can cause those building codes and zoning regulations and everything to be relaxed. And then they are able to build to highest and best use. So if you can imagine land that has a 30-foot 30-foot air rights, and then a developer comes in and buys it up, and they're able to get another 20 feet of air rights. Now they're able to build some, multifamily over a podium, whereas the existing owner couldn't pull that off. They could only do surface parking. They've significantly increased the value of the land, and so in order to really determine who's able to build, it's really about what the market allows. So if regulations are relaxed for the existing owners, and they're able to build to highest and best use, but they're restricted for would-be developers to come in and gobble up the land, then you protect the existing owners and actually provide them opportunities to build wealth. If the reverse is true, which is the way it typically works, then the developers will be the ones who can build, and the existing owners won't be able to afford to. And that's just a simple fact.
Yeah, and that's a scary thing for, homeowners. That, what, housing's expensive. I couldn't even imagine losing my entire house and then not being able to rebuild it financially because there's not enough insurance or equity, whatever the case is. All right, so we got the rebuild side of this, and obviously there's some hurdles to have to work and get over, I guess, not only from the developer standpoint, from the city standpoint or the municipality standpoint, but then it comes down to the people that vote all of them in office too, right? The homeowner.
Yeah.
You talked about something, right? Money. How does the capital work in this? What are the financial and investment perspectives that policymakers are going to look at, and even the homeowner? What are they going to look at?
Sure. So the way that disaster recovery is typically talked about, you're really looking at someone who's trying to get their insurance money and then rebuild what they had, and that's sort of the party line. If you listen to most of the public meetings in Los Angeles County talking about both Altadena and Pacific Palisades, they're talking about the same thing. They're talking about building like for like. In other words, build back a house that's the same footprint as what you had, or at least about the same square footage as what you had, using your insurance money. There's a reason why developers are looking to buy up the land. They're not looking to do that same type of thing. Now, you and I are very familiar with the way that development works. Developers aren't people that just have a lot of deep pockets and they're coming in and just buying up land themselves. They're using debt to do it.
Right.
And so their debt is based on the idea of the current value and the after renovation value, ARV, or after repair, however you look at it. But they're able to borrow against the new value of the property based on what they're going to build there. And what they're going to build there is always, I've used the term highest and best use because that's how you get the most money to build. If you have a piece of property that has a single family home on it now, for instance, if you're a developer, you come in and you say, well, I can use SB 9 in California, which allows you to split a lot in half. Any single family lot, you can split it in half, and then you can build a house on it and also build an ADU on it. So as a developer myself, that's what I would be doing with any lot that I got my hands on. I'd build it to basically take a single family lot that used to have a single home on it and essentially turn it into 4 by splitting it in half, building a house on each and a large ADU, maybe a 1,200 square foot ADU on each, and essentially have a 4-plex where there was 1. That's the highest and best use case. If the county wants to support local homeowners doing that, then you educate them about SB 9 lot splits. You also adopt AB 1033, for instance, which allows a homeowner to sell an ADU as a separate piece of property. So if you consider this now, you start off with one a parcel, and you split it in half into two parcels, and now you have two homes, and then you have two ADUs, and you are able to sell each one of those. You have four individual pieces of property. Now, if you are a really savvy developer, like I hope that I am, then I would then HELOC three of those, or maybe all four of those properties, and use that line of credit to invest further in real estate. So we talked about a little bit earlier the idea of generational wealth, but in many communities, when you talk about generational wealth, what you're really talking about is generational doing okay, or generational not really struggling. But wealth is something different. Wealth is when you don't have to work, when you can support your lifestyle just based on your assets. And here's an opportunity for people to actually build on a single family lot enough value to become wealthy, to be able to support a lifestyle without work any longer, just using the existing SB 9 lot split and AB 1033. But the county has to adopt it. It's available from the state of California. SB 10 would allow you to put 10 homes on a single family lot if it's large enough, and plus another two ADUs and two junior ADUs. That's actually 14 units that you could end up with on a single family lot. And using SB 13, you can streamline it. I mean, I could go on and on and on about how to build wealth using policy, but two things have to happen. You'll notice here. One is that the homeowner has to be educated about what legislation already exists by right. And the county has to, when it comes to sort of removing the obstacles, has to adopt what the state has already put out there for homeowners, while blocking it for people who would be predatory developers to come in and scoop it up. And notice I'm saying predatory developers, not just every developer, because every developer is not a predator.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be so powerful if they adopted those policies, and a homeowner now, even with the devastation, has the ability to be their own little developer on their land, or sell several parcels of that land for ADUs or multifamily, whatever the case is. And that's a way for that whole area to build back some generational wealth as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take advantage of that policy.
They can sell, they can HELOC and use the equity, but all these things are really sophisticated processes. And so that's where nonprofits come in, and government agencies. Now, the county actually has an agency whose specific task is actually dealing directly with consumers, helping them to exploit the resources that are available to them. So you got to provide support. Not everybody, no matter how much training you give them, is going to learn how to become a real estate developer, learn how to make it a 10-year pro forma, and it's too much to ask. But providing the administrative support for them so that they're able to build back and maximize their property is really, I think, the responsibility of government.
Well, I mean, they're here to serve us, right? I mean, that's the whole idea of what government is. And heck, with all the money they seem to be finding that's being wasted, hopefully they decide to put it back into the communities that need it the most, right? I mean, it's just, and I don't get into politics on this show, but sometimes I read some of this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, they're talking about trillions of dollars, not millions of dollars. And right now we have too many people on the streets from disasters or just from homelessness and not being able to afford something. That money should go to helping all of them.
Yeah, I think that it's important to remember that the government is not only there to serve us. The government is us. I mean, the government is made up of
we the people.
I mean, I was an elected official myself for 3 terms. So, the government is us, and so I think it's important that we try to remove the lines between them. They certainly shouldn't be battle lines between us and our representatives and our bureaucrats. Bureaucrats have kind of gotten a bad name, but the administrative state is that's the actual arm. Every time you push for some legislation through Congress, or in state legislature, the state legislature doesn't do anything with that. They write it down, they send it to the executive signs it, it becomes law, and then what happens? Then it goes to the agencies. Then it goes to the administrative state. It goes to the bureaucrats. They're the ones who know how to actually make that stuff happen. Without them, We wouldn't have streets. We wouldn't have schools. We wouldn't have lights. We wouldn't have anything. So, even our police department is actually part of the administrative state. So if we wouldn't have law enforcement either. So I mean, all of those things are really super important. It's important that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but that we communicate with our officials, communicate with our bureaucrats, let them know what it is that we need, and collaborate, with government to make our lives better. If we disassemble government, and believe me, I've traveled the world. I've been to places that don't have governance. You don't want to be there.
Or a different type of government, and it's not what we have here. And I hear you loud and clear, for sure. Dr. Musson, what is it that we haven't talked about? You also have Musson Factory, right? You are a developer, but I think what's unique about yourself is you are very focused on policy and helping others and rebuilding communities and getting people back on their feet. And that's always been a vision and a mission for you personally, at least as long as I've known you. I'm going to just put your factory up here as well. How do people connect with you? How do they work with you? I want people to be reaching out to you, because I think you have such an inside look on how this works that you could provide a lot of guidance to others in our industry that are trying to figure this out.
Yeah, absolutely. Mussonfactory.com is our consulting website. And people can contact us there. We are a team of consultants that have consulted government as well as consulted private industry. I think when we first met, I was putting together the largest Section 8 landlord in Los Angeles with a small factory and teaching the factory to become a manufacturer. And then our factory was providing the factory with subassemblies and teaching that manufacturing technology. The industry now is in a really precarious position. Some of the most prominent names in our industry have failed, beginning with Katera, that raised $2.5 billion from SoftBank and others, and folded because of a lack of manufacturing strategy, not in a manufacturing technology. And so the race to get better technology is not strategy. And understanding what happens, in the successful businesses that manufacture is still something that we're not really doing well. So if you're a factory owner, or if you're someone interested in the industry, we have a lot to say about that. But mostly right now, I think the most important constituency for us is government. Moving government policy into a place where it's not one of the barriers that prevents housing development is critical. Understanding that modern methods are available, but also understanding that the market will help owners to become developers if the profit is there. It's not always just about having somebody on the outside come in and build housing for people who live there. There are people who have property now who would love to be able to maximize that property if the regulations could get out of their way to do so. We can help with that as well. So
the regulations, right? That's been the hurdle for offsite manufacturing for as long as I've been in it, and that's over 25 years now. Hope my age isn't showing. But yeah, it's been an issue for a long time. Dr. Musson, last words. Anything that I left out? Anything important that you want to make sure you get across before we wrap this up?
I think I do this every time we talk. The last thing I always want to do is really thank you and Jen for what you guys do. You are such an important part of changing the way that our building industry and our housing market works, because as we talked about on the phone and we text, it's really important for people to change their perspectives through education and access, and for us to actually open the policy window through changing public opinion. And so, I really want to thank you guys for what you do. You're such an important just a fixture in the industry. And like I have told you offline, anything I can do to help, you let me know. I'm there. I really support what you guys are doing, and I'm I want to see you continue to win.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And we get so much support from, people like yourself and others in the industry, and, doing what we do and keeping it as a non-biased approach where we're just putting out the opportunities and the products and the people that are truly making a difference in this industry is what we love to do. And that's why you're on the show as well, because you are one of those people. So thank you for the kind words. And if anybody does want to get involved with us and help support us, we try very hard not to get in bed with the devil, as we say, but it takes time, it takes effort to find guests, to build shows, and to spotlight things that are happening around the world. So not only you out there can watch this, but the policy makers can also be educated by what we do. And we've been fortunate enough, and I haven't even told you this. I mean, we're working with the government in Laos and South Korea and so many other places around the world now to help them understand what the opportunities are and the people out there to make these differences. So again, Dr. Musson, thank you so much for being on the show, and from the bottom of our hearts, thanks for the kind words, man. We love to hear it, because we're always behind the camera. We don't always get to hear the good stuff that happens.
You're loved. You guys are awesome.
Awesome. Well, hey, listen, appreciate you, Dr. Musson. Don't go anywhere. We'll come back to you after our outro. And for all of you out there, if you want to be part of our community, please join us. You can have your name on the ticker below, and we can give you the inside and the backside look of everything. Be part of our newsletter. Be part of so many different things, or even showcase your products. If you want to come on this show, we're always looking to highlight and showcase those that are trying to build it better. And with that said, today is no different. Dr. Musson, don't go anywhere. Make sure you thank these sponsors as well, because we can't do any of these shows without the support of you out there and all of our supporting members. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you. And as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell. It would mean the world to us. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching.